Well, howdy. Welcome to Stab the Dragon Productions, episode number 1, maybe. This is a blog that's going to explore a variety of topics ranging from current events to history, literature, books, music, movie reviews, pretty much whatever I, the host, am interested in. Maybe even including whiskey reviews, drink reviews. There'll be some themes that will develop with time, and maybe a method to my madness will become apparent. Uh, the emphasis is going to be on bringing the gospel into Athens, like in Acts 17, perhaps. Defending our American heritage and Western civilization from the hordes of screaming barbarians that have breached the walls and are inside the wire. For those who may have missed it, we're in a war for our civilization. It seems like we're losing. Today I am sipping on some Topo Chico. This is one of my all-time favorite drinks right here. This is imported mineral water, carbonated. It's from Mexico, and I can just drink this stuff by the gallon, it seems like. It's very fizzy, very carbonated, very refreshing here in a hot Texas August afternoon. So why Stab the Dragon? That's what I'm calling this show. That's an odd name for sure, especially for a fat, out-of-shape, grumpy old white guy out of Texas. I mean, dragons belong in Europe with old castles and such, right? Or perhaps maybe in the Orient. But Texas? First of all, do you believe in dragons? I do. At least I believe in one dragon for sure. And the idea of dragons, certainly. The one dragon I know for sure is written about in Revelation 12. Now, war arose in heaven. Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, "Now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come, for the accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. And they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they loved not their own lives even unto death. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows his time is short." So I guess the dragon is metaphorical, but perhaps he represents Israel. In fact, I know he's real, the devil. I might wish for real physical dragons upon which we could fly or fight against, but the dragon to which I'm referring is Satan and his system, his minions, his ideas. And then, of course, there's that dragon, Smaug. He was a fierce dragon of an old order for sure. Tolkien told his history in the book The Hobbit, or There and Back Again. He was a fire-breathing, death-dealing, greedy, flying reptile that terrorized men long ago. I like that idea of a dragon, but not because of the dragon himself. Smaug was certainly smelly, despicable, evil, dangerous. He was a wicked beast, killed lots of people. But with the idea of dragons also comes the idea of dragon slayers. Those men of old who had the courage, the heart, the strength and wits to fight dragons and win. Dragons test us. They strike fear into our hearts so that we're motivated to do whatever it takes to defeat them and slay them. You can try to run and hide, but dragons have a way of destroying everything when they're riled up. No, it's best to face the dragon and try to kill him. Bard the bowman shot that one arrow into just the right spot and downed Smaug. The dragon we're facing today, if anything, is harder to kill than Smaug. In fact, not one of us can kill this dragon, yet we're called to fight him. That dragon, the ancient serpent, the devil, has received a mortal blow from Christ, and his doom is sealed. But for now, he's still warring against Christ, his church, all mankind. The devil's system is the world system. Worldly philosophers, evil rulers, lands like Mordor that are evil incarnate, and even those daily sins we all struggle with. So when I say stab the dragon, I'm talking about fighting sin, evil, and wickedness in our own personal lives as well as in the public square. And when we're fighting evil, we must also defend the good, the true, the just, and beautiful. We must defend the faith, the Bible, the church, and our fellow Christians. We actively promote the reign of Christ over every sphere of our culture. More than defense, we must go on offense to spread, proclaim, and live out the gospel, pursuing Christ, pursuing holiness, seeking the glory of God. So this idea of stab the dragon is not some desperate, feeble attempt at self-preservation. No, I'm talking about stalking that evil beast, closing with the enemy in his den, stabbing him in the eye. Or, if we all really are going over the side of the cliff, stab that dragon on the way down anyway. So yeah, many of us, or most of us really, are feeling the attacks right now. We're reeling. We're on defense. We feel like we're losing. Keep in mind the victory has already been won by Christ, and He is coming again soon. We're to occupy till He comes, and by occupy I mean contest every square inch, every intellectual realm. We don't give up anything. The problem is that for at least 150 years, the church has been retreating into some kind of a Christian ghetto, or compromising with the world out of fear of man or out of seeking to gain the world via some shortcut. In the Korean War, Marine General Chesty Puller is quoted as saying at the Battle of Chosin, "They are in front of us, behind us, and we're flanked on both sides by an enemy that outnumbers us. They can't get away from us now." And that's one way of saying it. A more biblical way to illustrate it is found in 1 Samuel 17, where young David ran to the battle with the Philistines to engage that giant Goliath. David took on that giant who was wearing armor. He had a shield bearer, a sword, a javelin, and all David had was a sling and 5 smooth stones. But David's trust was in the Lord, and he said, "This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head." And that young teenager did just that. His aim was sure. God guided the stone and hit Goliath right between the eyes and killed him dead. And then David did a very good and godly thing. He took that giant's sword and hacked off his head for a trophy. That's the attitude we need today. That's what I'm talking about when I say stab the dragon. Now keep in mind, proper hermeneutics tells us that in this story, David points us to Christ, who fights for us and slays that giant on our behalf. He slays the devil and sin. We're much more like the scared Hebrew soldiers back in the line who really aren't up to facing the giant then, and so we are proclaiming Christ in his victory. Nonetheless, David sets an example for us, and it's an example good for us to follow. He trusted in God, he exemplified courage as he ran to the battle, and he hacked off that giant's head to show to the Philistines and the Israelites that the giant was indeed dead. David had practiced for years with that sling, and God guided the stone. This is good stuff for a masculine Christianity today. Christ wins, and we follow that godly example. So what will we be doing in this blog? We'll examine some books, some history, theology, classic literature, discuss their significance, relate them to the gospel. I'm the church librarian at my church, and I love to talk about books and authors. We have a book club at the church where we read classical books and discuss them in light of the gospel. So I'd like to use some of that material here. In defending the gospel and Western civilization in America, I find books to be very useful and fun. I like interacting with classical books. Some of the books are also controversial and are being banned. Cancel culture and all that. You see, that's what dragons do. Current events certainly are fair game. Discussing current events can get a person kicked off of social media very quickly. So we've got to be sly and cunning here. Maybe speak in code language, We've got to sneak into the dragon's lair like Bilbo did to Smaug. I like all things military. I'm an Army vet, and Army runs in my family for multiple generations, so I like to discuss military things. My wife and I like watching movies, old classics in particular. We don't do many new or current movies, sometimes, but not very often. I may share some music that I enjoy, even some art pieces perhaps. Art and music are huge for Western Civ and for the church. Maybe preach a sermon or two. I used to be a preacher. I can still throw together a decent sermon now and then. That bit about David and Goliath a while ago, I think there's some sermons there in that story. Much of preaching today is strong on the gospel, sound doctrine, but I think it's also sometimes weak in understanding the times and somewhat feminized, and we need to be bucked up in a masculine sort of way. We need a muscular, strong biblical preaching that gives men backbone as we fight against the dragon of communism and other dragons that are creeping through our streets now. I do enjoy a dram of whiskey once in a while, so perhaps we'll do some whiskey sampling and whiskey history. Whiskey's not about getting drunk, being wild and crazy. Whiskey's a very complex, rich drink that needs to be respected, not abused. And a brief note about the technical side of things. I am basically Cro-Magnon man with troglodyte skill levels. These blogs and videos will be very basic, low-tech, if I can even pull it off. How often will I post a blog or video? I could hope for weekly, but I'm not sure. We'll just have to wait and see. There's a lot of research to be done, even if you're going to do a whiskey review. Sermons take a long time. Movie reviews take some time. Book reviews take some time. Now, what about myself, my background? I've told you a little bit about what I'm interested in, but who am I? I am a gray man. I blend in with the crowd. I don't stick out. I'm pretty much an anonymous nobody. Now, I was born in a Christian family of the Southern Baptist persuasion. You could always find me in church on Sunday mornings, Sunday nights, Wednesday nights, vacation Bible school in the summer, various youth camps. I was definitely one of those Bible-thumping fundamentalists. Now, when I was 8 years old, the Lord saved me. It was during a revival service in a small town in Oklahoma. I heard the gospel. I knew I was a sinner and that my only hope for salvation from God's wrath was trusting in Jesus. So God gave me the faith to do just that. I knew that Jesus was God's Son and that He died in my place on the cross so that I could be saved. So the Lord saved me then. As I got older, my faith grew. I never departed from the faith, though I certainly grew in sin as well as in grace. Christians are not sin-free. We're not perfect by any means. We are saved sinners. We know the reality of our own wickedness and the goodness of God's grace. When I left home at 18, I went to attend the University of Oklahoma on an Army ROTC scholarship. While I was there studying history, I also studied my faith and the scriptures more deeply. I wanted to see if I believed because of how I was raised, or if I believed because it was true. And so the idea of apologetics became very important to me. Is the gospel true? Is the scriptures true? And so I came away with my faith confirmed, believing in the historicity of the Bible, believing in the truthfulness of the gospel. When I graduated from OU, I was commissioned as a lieutenant in the United States Army. I served in the Army Infantry for 4 years. From early childhood on, I'd wanted to fight for my country, serve my country. I knew that my father had fought the Germans in World War II, and my grandfather had a Purple Heart from World War I. So the Army runs in our family. So I served in the Cold War. I served stateside. I was not on the front lines of anything, but I did serve in the infantry at Fort Lewis in the 9th Infantry Division. I did nothing to distinguish myself. We were in kind of a interesting test unit that tested lots of equipment and concepts. I served as a light infantry platoon leader, a heavy mortar platoon leader, and a company XO. I was average. I did nothing spectacular. I met my wife while I was in the Army at Fort Benning, Georgia, during my training period. I met her in Sunday school at the church I was going off base. She came from a good Christian Southern family. We got married after knowing each other for about a year. Most of our courtship was long distance in the days before there was email and texting. So we wrote letters and talked on the phone. We've had 2 sons together, both following Jesus. We've got a daughter-in-law and 2 grandchildren, another one soon to be. So we've been married for close to 40 years. After my 4 years in the Army, I moved here to Fort Worth, Texas, attended Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, and graduated 4 years later with a Master of Divinity. I pastored a small church for about 15 years while working a full-time security job the whole time. It's called being bivocational. I'm still working security, but I gave up the professional ministry a long time ago. It's a brutal occupation. You and your family pay a high price. The church I've been serving as a layman now since 2007 is the best church I've ever been a part of. God's grace is truly amazing. My hobbies include reading, science fiction, classical lit, theology, military history, American history, world history, thrillers. I like to cook, like watching old movies, listening to classical music, jazz, oldies. And we have cats. You may occasionally see the cats here in these videos, Intrepid and Felix. I used to enjoy guns and shooting. I still carry a gun professionally in my job, but I lost most of my other guns in a boating accident in the Gulf of Mexico a few years ago. And as I said earlier, I do enjoy a good dram of whiskey now and then. So here we are, 2021, August. The country is going full tilt communist and pervert, it seems. And the gospel seems to be in full retreat mode. The church seems to be in disarray and compromised all over. America is in full retreat from Afghanistan in a most disgraceful and confused manner. As Mel Gibson said, playing the role of Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore in the movie We Were Soldiers, fix bayonets. It's time to attack, to stab the dragon, if you will. Or to quote that great warrior, Todd Beamer, let's roll. He stabbed the dragon. I'm out of time for this first episode, so we'll be signing off now. Just a closing super secret message to those men and women behind enemy lines, doing the Lord's work as part of the resistance. Constantine says, in hoc signo vinces. Thank you.